Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Paramagurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarvagurubhyo Namaha. So we're continuing with our discussion of Hari Bhakti Vilas. And we have come to the end of the 10th Vilas, or the 10th chapter, which is there are 20 Vilasas, or 20 chapters in Hari Bhakti Vilas. And so we finished up the 10th chapter, and now we're going to start with a new chapter, a new Vilas of Hari Bhakti Vilas, the 11th Vilas. So let's have a look at the text. So as usual, Gopalbhatta Goswami or Sananda Goswami is starting off with the first verse of every Vilas. Normally is a glorification of Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Lord Chaitanya, and it also sometimes gives us a hint about the topics that will be discussed in the Vilas. But let's have a look. So the first text is. I worship the most wonderful and influential personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, by whose mercy even a most sinful person can engage in devotional service of the Lord. Okay, so it doesn't seem to give us much hint as to what the subject is going to be. Text 2. Thereafter, towards the end of the day, so if we're looking back on the previous Vilasas, we have come to the point of discussing the different parts of the day, and so in the beginning of a Vaishnava's day, we have Abhigamana, which means getting up and doing your ablutions and getting dressed and remembering the Guru Parampara, and then Upadana, which is the next system of going and collecting items which are necessary for worship, and then Ija, which is the third section of the day, where we actually worship the form of the Lord. We worship the Lord within the heart, first of all, and then externally in the deity. And then Swadhyaya brought us up to the end of the 10th Vilas, that where we study or we teach or we study in a group of Vaishnavas. We study the scriptures, or even by ourselves, we can study the scriptures. This is called Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya actually literally means Adhyaya, means Adhyayana. Adhyayana means to study the scriptures, specifically the Vedas, but any other scriptures also. And Swadhyaya means self-study. So Swadhyaya. So that's that part of the day. There was a small talk about some small time that we have, that the Brahmin or the Vaishnava has to earn his livelihood, to do some sort of material job to keep a roof over his head and keep food on the table, but to deal with materialistic things, because we live in the material world. And then now we're talking about the end of the day. So at the end of the day, one has to sit. The last of the 5 sections of the day is yoga, where one sits and meditates on the Lord until one falls asleep, or one takes rest. Yeah. So let's see what it says here. Thereafter, towards the end of the day, a Brahmin should enter the temple room and conscientiously perform his evening duties. So evening duties it's specifically in the last line of this second sloka. It says Sandhyam upasita yata vidi with yata with vidi with the. So we've got aratram. Aratram means in the night. Kritva, having done in the night, right? His evening sandhya, vandanam, chanting of Vedic and Vaishnava mantras, and remembering that meditation on the Lord during that time. So here we have it's going to talk about evening duties. So text 3. Ata, again, Ata is used when we start a topic. Sayantana Kritani. So Kritani means duties or activities, right? Sayanta means in the evening. So in the Vishnu Purana, there's a conversation between Olva and Sagara. And it states, O king, a learned devotee should, after performing Achamana, right? We learned how to perform Achamana previously in Hari Bhakti Vilas, Vaishnava Achamana, execute his morning duties at dawn, and his evening duties at dusk. Right. So specifically, we have Achmana mentioned here in the verse specifically. Sandhya is mentioned. Dinantam. Dinantam means at the end of it. Dina means day. At the end of the day, Dinantam. Sandhyam. Right. Suryena. The sun is mentioned because Vedic Sandhya involves the chanting of the Savitri Gayatri, which is a prayer to Lord Sriman Narayana or Surya Narayana within the sun. Deyasa Sada Savati Vandala Madhyavarti Narayana Sarasada Sanasani Vistaki Yolavanma Karakundalavan Kiriti Hari Haramaya Bahu Vijasankachakraha. Okay. So then we have so to say, O king, a learned devotee should, after performing Achmana, execute his morning duties at dawn and his evening duties at dusk when the sun is going down. Of course, such devotional practices can be performed at other times during the day as well. So that's interesting. Some people might take this as a pramana to say that, well, if we don't have time at dawn or dusk, if we're engaged in some other service to the Lord, then we can appropriately perform these nitya kriyas, which are eternal activities, this sandhya activity, which has to be performed, right, at some other time also. So this theoretically we could use this verse as a pramana to say that if you can't perform it, if you're performing some other devotional activities at the time when sandhya should be performed, either at dawn or dusk, then you should just do it afterwards or at another time, either before or after. So, text 4 and 5. O king, a sinful person who does not perform his morning and evening duties, except upon the birth of a child or death of a family member, or in time of danger or fearfulness, will certainly be punished in the hellish planet known as Tamishra. Tamishra is there is a list in the Puranas of different hells, which are considered lower planetary systems. So whether you accept that as literal or not literal, the point is that there is a particular type of hell called Tamishra, which a person will go in and inhabit, will have to be suffer in that hell if he doesn't perform these duties, which are compulsory. There are some compulsory duties, and Sandhya Vandanam is one of them, and these are to be performed at the time when they're supposed to be performed. But here, what he's saying is that there might be an exception in the case of a birth of a family member or a death of a family member, right? In which case the person involved is involved in what's called Titu in Tamil or Asocha in Sanskrit. He's in a contaminated state because someone in his gotra or in his close family has died or been born, right? And so that's for 10 days, one is considered to be in a state of impurity, ritual impurity. So actually, though, the general system of ritual impurity is that the Sandhya Vandanam is never given up, right? So, but here it's very interesting because it seems to be saying, and we should check this because if this is actually in Vishnu Purana, I would be very surprised.
Yeah, I was also surprised reading this.
Yeah, I would be surprised because normally the Sandhya Vandana is never given up, even in Titu, even in Asocha periods. So, or it says in time of danger or fearfulness. Okay, so in time of danger, of course, we simply have to save a person or save ourselves from that danger, and obviously we have to put Sandhya Vandanam off till the danger has passed. But in any case, I think we need to look up Vishnu Purana and look this verse up and see exactly what the verse means, and I'll keep people informed about if there's some other translational meaning. Maybe if we look at the commentary also by Sanatana Goswami, there may be some indication. Anyway, let's continue on. Text 6 and 7. Thereafter, according to the rules prescribed for his ashrama, okay, so it's assumed that people who are reading Hari Bhakti Vilasa, they're following some sort of rules and regulations for the varna and ashrama. This is the social system the Hindu social system or the Vaishnava social system, which is set up. Now, there's different ways of interpreting that social system, right? There's a smarter way of interpreting it, according to the Smriti Shastras like Manu, which is that the castes themselves are by birth, and that there are certain also obligations for different ashramas based on the caste that you're born in. Then you are eligible for either 4, 3, 2, or even only one ashrama, and you should perform the duties of that particular ashrama. Now, so whereas Varna means caste, the ashrama, Varna literally means color, but in this sense, it means caste. And ashrama means a stage of life. So there are different stages of life. Of course, everybody goes through certain stages of life, but the different in the Smriti Shastras, in the Smarta Varnashram system, the eligibility for different ashramas is there for different castes. For instance, the Brahmana, or the intellectual in society who is born in a Brahmin family, he has the eligibility for all the 4 stages, 4 ashramas: brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyasi. The Kshatriya, who is born in a royal family, he has the eligibility for 3, for brahmachari, grihastha, and vanaprastha. The Vaishya has really eligibility only for 2, for brahmachari and grihastha. And the Sudra, of course, has only eligibility for 1, and that is the grihastha ashrama, like that. As soon as he reaches the age of puberty, he has to be married. Otherwise, it'll cause disturbance in society. So normally, though, the higher castes in the Smarta Varnashram system, the Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, and Brahmanas, they will go to the Gurukula. The male Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas will go to the Gurukula. They'll learn the Vedas. They'll study the Vedas, and they'll leave at certain times, and they'll adopt their grihastha ashram. They'll become grihasthas, and they'll adopt their particular duties in society, like that. That's the Smarta Varnashram system. Now, when we have Vaishnavism, now the idea is that the Smarta Varnashram system, by following the Smarta Varnashram system, and also, by the way, some even the women who are born in the Vaishya, Kshatriya, and Brahmin families are not, according to the Smarta system, are also not particularly educated in the Vedas, or and they can also not perform certain activities, right? So because in the Smarta system, Sudras and ladies, they don't chant Vedic mantras. Okay, so they don't learn the Vedas. But if we look back, if we see Vajrasutrika Upanishad as an example, the Satyakama Jabala story in Chandogya Upanishad, there are some examples that tell us that prior to the institution of the Smarta system, the Smarta Varnashram system, there was a different system. And in fact, there were women who were Vedic rishis and who studied the Vedas, who even had Upanayanam. According to Harita Samhita, there's a section where it says that ladies can wear the sacred thread and they have Upanayanam. So there are different. There was a different form of Varnashram at a certain point. It got codified and later on became the Smarta Varnashram system. Originally, it was according to the qualification of a person, because in the Rig Veda, there is no indication in the Rig Veda Purusha Shukla, which is the start of the understanding of Varnashram. There is no indication in Brahmanosya Mukamasi Bahu Raja Nikitaha. Urutarasya Vaishaha Padyam Sutra Jayata. First of all, women are not mentioned in that. And similarly, there's no mention that this is by birth only. It's normally understood in Vajrasutrika Upanishad is by qualification. And people also sometimes quote Bhagavad Gita saying Chaturvarna Maya Shishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasaha, that it is by the qualities and by the actions of a person that a person is to be classified, and not simply by the birth. So there are these philosophical reasons that are given in the Vedas, the Upanishads, and the Bhagavad Gita, to tell us to follow a social system of division of labor, or division of duties in society, according to the qualities of people, and not according to gender or according to birth, caste by birth. However, in India, what happened over the millennium, the Smriti Shastras, the writers of the Smriti Shastras, codified the Smarta Varnashram system to be simply according to caste by birth, and also to certain occupations and certain duties to be only performed by males of the three higher castes, which are called the Trivarnikas, the male Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. We can also note that in Sanskrit grammar, when we talk about Brahmins, right, in Sanskrit grammatically, it means also Brahmanis. It means male Brahmins and female Brahmins. If we talk about Kshatriyas, it means male Kshatriyas and female Kshatriyas. And it also, if we talk about Vaishyas, it means male Vaishyas and female Vaishyas. If we talk about Shudras, it means male Shudras and female Shudras. There are only four castes, even according to Manu. He says there is a verse in Manu which says there are only four, there is not five. However, even then we find that later on, what changed, that it crept into the system that there were even more divisions lower than the Sudra, which were counted like Yavanas, Mlechas, Chinna, Kambuja. These are all people from China, people from Cambodia, people from, they're all mentioned in the Sanskrit of Manusmriti. So those things have all crept into the system, and the system has become a little bit corrupt in the sense that it became caste by birth and or by geographical location where one was born. To be born in China, or to be born in Cambodia, or to be born in Greece or in Europe, one was called those things: Chinna, Cambodia, Yavana, Lecha, etc. And one was then therefore delegated to a caste even below what the normal Shudra would be in the Smarta Varnashram system. So it's all very interesting. How should Vaishnavism interact with this? Okay, in my opinion, and feel free to disagree, anybody. In my opinion, the original Vedic system is a system which meshes very well with Vaishnavism. Vaishnavism is a system of philosophy, of doctrines and practices, which preaches that in one lifetime, one can achieve moksha or liberation, which is the goal of life. And even if we take the Gaudiya Vaishnavism, for instance, where the goal may be stated as being prema, Krishna prema, or the love of Krishna, that love of Krishna can only really be fully perfected in a spiritual body beyond this material world. So this is the goal. This is the goal of all Vaishnavas: is eternal service to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna in his heavenly abode. So this is the idea. So how to achieve that? Now, if we want to achieve that through the Smarta Varnashram system, the way to achieve that is to take birth. And if you take birth as a woman or a Sudra or something like that, in your next birth, you may take birth as a male. And then if you still take birth as a Sudra, in your next birth, after that, you can take birth. You can follow all the Smarta Varnashram rules and regulations. In your next birth after that, you can become a Vaishya. And then from a Vaishya male, you can become a Kshatriya male. And from a Kshatriya male, finally, you can take birth as a Brahmin male. And then you can fully devote yourself to spiritual study of the Vedas and et cetera, and you can then attain liberation that way. So this is a Varnashram system. The Smarta Varnashram system takes at least 4 or 5 lifetimes from the time that you take birth in a human form of life, right, to reach the goal. And that's a minimum, because it doesn't mean that every time you take birth you're going to step up the ladder according to the Smarta system. But eventually you can attain within 4 or 5 lifetimes. It's a very good system in that sense. Within 4 or 5 lifetimes of achieving human birth, the soul can be elevated to liberation, or to the Parama Purushartha, which is the highest goal for human beings. Of course, there are these 4 goals: Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, and the different castes. The different sections of society are interested in one or more of those goals primarily. So, for instance, the Sudras are primarily interested in happiness, right? A Sudra means that his number one goal is happiness. His primary goal is happiness. He's not so worried about liberation. He's not so worried about religiosity. He's not so worried about economic development or making money. He's just interested in being happy. Okay, so then the Vaishya, his primary goal is to amass wealth. And so even he may put off his happiness in order to amass wealth. Of course, he's a little. All of the castes are supposed to be interested in all of these things. All of these are all human goals. The Vaishya is more interested in. He's primarily interested in amassing wealth. The Kshatriya is most interested in dharma. He's most interested in establishing religiosity, religious principles, making everything fair for everybody in society because he's a manager of society. And the Brahmin is most interested in moksha. In terms of Bhagavad Gita, we see that there are actually four types of people that approach Krishna, four types of people who do not approach Krishna, four types of people who go to God, they turn to God to achieve these ends, and four types of people who do turn away from God. They don't think of God, they reject God, but they still want these ends. So these four types of people are in society who have these four aims. What are the four aims again? The four aims are, first of all, happiness, wealth, right? Fairness or religiosity, right? And ultimately liberation. Okay, so these are human goals, and everybody in society wants those. Now, some people, they turn to God to try to solve those problems and attain those goals, and other people don't. So in the Bhagavad Gita, it's talked about there is Chaturvida Bhajanti Mam Jnana Sukhatanojana Artho Jigyasa Artati Jnanacha Bharata Shaba. That Krishna says that there are these four types of people, right? And that turn to him to solve these problems. So you have the person who is in distress. He wants happiness. He's a Sudra. The person who is in so this the person who's in distress, he's in search, somebody who's in search of wealth, someone who's inquisitive, right? So we've got the Vaishya, and then we've got somebody who's inquisitive, the Kshatriya, right? He's a little bit interested in religiosity, but not fully to the point of making moksha his primary goal. And then you have the Brahman who is interested in moksha like that. So one who's interested in Jnani, who's interested in the attaining the supreme, like that. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, out of all those, the Jnani he considers the Jnani to be the best, the person who's interested in spiritual things, interested in the goal of liberation. He's the best, right? Udara eva seva Jnani tatvaiva me matam. He says Jnani I consider to be the best. Now, there are these other people who are asuras, who are demoniac people. Similarly, there are four types of those people. There's the Maya Pritigyana, who's the demoniac Brahman, the Asura Bhavamashrita, who is the demoniac Kshatriya, there's the Naradama, who's the demoniac Vaishya, and there's the Buddha, Namam Duskritino Mudha Papadyante Naradama, Maya Pritigyana, Asura Bhavamashrita. So these four types of people also. So in society, we basically get the idea there are these four types of people, whether they're devotees or not devotees, whether they're Vaishnavas or not Vaishnavas. So the caste system or the Smarta Varnashram system deals with all of those, whether they're Vaishnavas or not Vaishnavas. The Vaishnava Varnashram system, if you have a Vaishnava Varnashram system, you still have four types of people. But you have to, first of all, look at them and see, are they Vaishnavas or are they not Vaishnavas? If they're Vaishnavas, they tend to transcend these other categories of caste by birth, right? Which we've seen through Hari Bhakti Vilasa. It talks about women who are Vaishnavas. It talks about Satsudras, people who are born as Sudras, but they're Vaishnavas, as being higher than even Brahmins, than even persons who are born in Brahmin families, like that. So this seems to be taking the system of Varnashram from the original Upanishads and from the Vedas, rather than taking it from the later Shmriti Shastras and by Manu, which talk about caste by birth. So and so therefore the idea of the Bhagavad Gita is that separate the division of society into classes rather than castes by birth, right? There are classes which are based on the qualities and activities of a person. Okay, so now still there are people who are in different classes, and therefore there will be different ashramas which are naturally important for them or not important for them, right? So these different stages of life can be gone through. But in the Vaishnava Varnashram system, there may not be a strict following of all of the rules that came in with the division of caste according to birth and gender, right? That may not be. what is the advantage of the Vaishnava system over the ordinary Smarta Varnashram system, right? The advantage is that Vaishnavism teaches that we can attain liberation in one lifetime, whereas Varnashram system is a system, once you attain the human form of life, you still have few different lifetimes that you have to go through following all of your duties correctly according to the caste system, right, to attain liberation. Whereas liberation can be attained in one lifetime itself, or in less than in a quicker time than in the Smarta Varnashram system. Okay, so there's an advantage there. So it may be quicker. But so there are different people who want to follow different types of societies. So it's up to them whether they, when people emphasize the rules and regulations of the Smarta Varnashram system more and the Shmiti Shastras than the original Vedic understanding or what's given in Bhagavad Gita, right? Then they tend to accept the caste by birth system and qualifications by gender system. And when people look at the original Vedic system and they understand that Vaishnavas tend to transcend some of these caste rules, caste by birth rules, right? Then they tend towards the Vaishnava system. Okay. So now, whenever it says Brahman here, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, we can also understand the same will apply to a person who is not particularly born in a Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya family, but a person who has the qualities of one of the Trivarnika castes, one who has the qualities of a Brahman, Kshatriya, and Vaishya. But he's a Vaishnava. He can also transcend his birth, right, or her birth, and therefore take to those activities also. So that will be the Vaishnava Varnashram system. Okay. Some people call the Vaishnava Varnashram system the Daivi Varnashram system to distinguish it from the ordinary Varnashram system. I would prefer to be more exacting and say that there is the Smarta Varnashram system. Why do we call it Smarta? It's not because people are more intelligent, but the word Smarta is actually a Sanskrit word meaning following of the Shmriti exactly. Following of the Shmriti Shastras and exalting the Shmriti Shastras over the Vedas and over the Bhagavad Gita. Whereas the Vaishnava Varnashram system exalts Vaishnava principles, which are given in the original Vedas and Upanishads, in Purusha Sukta, Vajrasutrika Upanishad, like I said, the Satyakama Jabala story of Chandogya Upanishad, etc. And also Harita Samhita, right, which talks about female Upanayanam, etc. All these things over the Shmriti Shastras, including the Bhagavad Gita, also its idea of Chaturvana Maya Shrishtam Gunakara Vibhagasa as a guiding principle in order to divide society into classes rather than dividing simply by birth. Okay, so one is Smarta Varnashram system, which exalts the Shmritis, and one is Vaishnava Varnashram, which exalts the Vaishnava texts and the Vedas and the original concept of Varnashram coming from Purusha Sukta and the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so these are the differences. So here is talking here about following the particular duties of your ashrama, right? Your stage of life. So before understanding what your duties of your ashrama is, you have to understand what your class is in society, or caste if you're following the Smarta Varnashram system. One has to understand what caste he comes in, right? He or she, right? And what class if he's a Vaishnava, like that. And then what stage of life is eligible, that class is eligible. The eligibility will be similar in Vaishnavism as it is in the Smarta Varnashram system, right? So we have to get technical, we have to find out what the prescribed rules and regulations are for the particular ashram according to the particular class that we represent, that a person is functioning in society in, right? Which will be based upon his qualities, his personal qualities, and also his actions, the job that he does, and the different activities that he performs in society. And therefore, according to that, we will know what duties he has according to his class and his ashram, his stage of life. Okay, and then the worship. Okay, so thereafter, according to the rules prescribed for his ashram, it doesn't say what those are, but every reader of this book will know what they are. Right, an intelligent devotee, meaning a Vaishnava, right? So it says here, Bhagavad Archanam, somebody who's worshipping Lord Vishnu is a Vaishnava. An intelligent devotee should first complete his morning and evening duties and then worship the Lord, Supreme Lord with full attention. Okay, so the worship of the Lord, there are certain prerequisites and post-requisites. There are certain things that we do before we worship the Lord and certain things we do after we finish the worship of the Lord. Now, we also already discussed all these things in the Vilasas after the second Vilas. So first and second Vilas, we search for an Acharya, we search for a guru, someone to give us initiation in order to become a Vaishnava officially and to teach us about Vaishnavism. And then the second Vilas explains about that initiation ceremony. After that initiation ceremony, or that beginning of our spiritual life, then from the third Vilas onwards, the authors of Hari Bhakti Vilas deal with the progress of the Vaishnava, right? And how in his daily life he performs these prescribed rules for his vana and ashrama, for his class and his stage of life. Right, he performs how he gets up, how he takes bath, how he gets ready for the worship, and then he worships the Lord, does Sanya Vandanam, then worships the Lord, and then at the end of that day, so we're coming to the end of daily activities. We're going to talk about occasional activities which are not daily activities, which happen on certain times in the calendar, maybe bi-weekly or monthly activities. That's going to come a little bit later. But right now we're saying we've got to finish off with our daily activities. So we've talked all about from Vilasas 3 and 4. We've talked about the morning activities of Abhigamana and Upadana. Then from 5 to 8, we've basically covered worship of the Lord. And now we're talking about the post-worship of the Lord activities. We've already discussed Swadhyaya, which is the study of the Vedas. So we did worship of the Lord, which is Ija, then Swadhyaya. And now we're going to come to yoga, but there are some other activities which are post-worship of the Lord, which we also have to do. So what he's saying here is that intelligent devotee, first of all, completes those preliminary activities, then worships the Lord, right? So and so it says here, first of all, complete the morning activities, right, and then worship the Lord. It also says, first of all, there are maybe some evening activities which you have to do, and then again worship the Lord, right? So again, we're going to see the worship of the Lord in the evening, right? Now, the worship of the Lord in the evening may not be exactly the same as the worship of the Lord in the morning in the temple, and in the house it may be very, very much abbreviated, right? Even in the temple, it may be abbreviated to just offering an arti or something like that in the temple, but in the house it may also be very abbreviated. Form of just putting the Lord to rest or whatever it is. We'll see as we go through. So for a devotee, there is no fault if he's unable to perform his morning or evening duties due to being engaged in some other devotional service of the Lord. Right, so this is exactly what I was saying before, that in the Smarta Varnashram system, of course, people are very attentive to following all the rules and regulations given in the Smriti Shastra of performing Sanya Vandana and doing all these preliminary and the prelim and the post-lim activities before and after the worship of the Lord. But here it says, if at that time when you're supposed to do the morning and evening duties, right, you have some other form of Vaishnava devotional service, which means the service of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, then you can postpone those. Right, or even you can neglect those other activities which are according to the Smriti Shastras, according to the Smarta Varnashram system, And you can just take to the main activities. The main activity is what? The main activity is worship of the Lord, Sri Krishna, is Vaishnavism. So the main system of Vaishnavism, again, here is seen to override in cases where there's a conflict, right? Maybe there's no conflict. Maybe we have plenty of time to do Sandhya Vandana and also worship the Lord, right? But in case we don't have any time, we will neglect the Sandhya Vandana and we will worship the Lord. The worship of the Lord is most important, right? Whereas these nitya naimittika kriyas, which are not directly worship of the Lord, of course, all of these are all of these things that we do, even the Sandhya Vandana, they're all the order of the Lord in the scriptures for us to do them. So in one sense, they're all directly or indirectly worshiping the Lord. But we can give up the indirect worship of the Lord by performing Sandhya Vandana, taking bath, whatever it is, spiritualistic, whatever it is, these things. If there's a discussion about whether we have time to do one or the other, we have to take the time that we have and we have to worship the Lord. That's the most important thing, right? So for Vaishnavas, this is in a Vaishnava text. Okay, it'd be nice to see if this is in Vishnu Purana also. That'd be very nice to read. So this is a very good pramana here. So continuing on with text 8, it says here, again, it says atah. So inability to perform his duty does not degrade a devotee of the Supreme Lord. We can remember also from Bhagavad Gita, in this case, that even if a Vaishnava, see, normally in the normal Varnashram system, in the Smarta Varnashram system, if somebody does something wrong, if he neglects his Sandhya Vandana, he loses his caste, actually. According to Manu, if you forget, even if you perform Sandhya Vandana in a wrong way, there's a verse in Manu that says, one who stands in the evening Sandhya Vandana, when he's chanting Gayatri and he's standing in the evening, or he sits in the morning. If you chant Gayatri sitting in the morning, or if you chant Gayatri standing in the evening, you lose your caste. You're going to lose your caste. That is wrong. You must stand in the morning when you chant Gayatri. You must sit in the evening when you chant Gayatri. According to Manu, like that. So there are these very small rules. This is why sometimes people say, "Oh, this is a smarter rule" or something like that. It's in the Smriti Shastra. Yes. Go ahead.
And at noon, we should stand or sit.
It's very interesting because noon Sandhya Vandana is not spoken about much in the Shastras, but I would say since there's no rule about it, so you can either stand or sit. But normally, I think people normally stand. People normally stand in tradition, but since there's no rule, I would say it's not improper to sit like that. But once again, standing and sitting is not the most important thing. The most important thing is chanting, chanting the mantra. What's the most important part of Sandhya Vandana? Sandhya Vandana, there's two central acts to Sandhya Vandana. That is chanting of the Savitri Gayatri mantra, that is Gayatri Japa, but also the offering of Arghya, Surya Arghya. So first the Surya Arghya, because Sandhya Vandana is divided into two parts, which is called the Jala Bhaga and the Japa Bhaga. So first of all, we do all these things with water, Jala, and then we do Japa. So the first, we have to offer Arghya to the sun. And this is one of the main points of doing Sandhya Vandana, is the Brahmins are supposed to offer this Arghya, which is a weapon, which is a missile, which is sent to help the battle that goes on between the demons and the sun. So there are these Mahendara demons there are millions of them who are attacking the sun each day. And in the morning and the evening, the sun is not as bright as it is in the middle of the day. So in the morning, we offer 3 Arghyas, 3 missiles to help the sun ward off these demons. And in the evening, we offer another 3 missiles. Of course, the missiles and the demons and everything like that, these all have meanings, inner meanings. And we can understand that in the morning and the evening, our consciousness is a little bit cloudy, because of just waking up from sleep or just about to go to sleep. So we want our consciousness, the whole prayer of Gayatri is to enthuse our meditation. We want the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, in this case, Surya Narayana within the sun, to to uh, to to enthuse us, to enthuse us to continue to think about him and to meditate upon him, which is the goal of life, right? Which will ultimately take us to him. Krishna says, if you think about me, will come to me, like that. So this is the reason for Gayatri, so offering Arghya and offering and doing the Gayatri Japa. Now, the Sandhyavandanam itself, right? There are some other parts to the Sandhyavandanam: sipping water for purification, for prayaschitta for any sins that we committed since the last Sandhyavandanam, unknowingly or knowingly. And so these are also parts of Sandhyavandanam. So the japa itself, there are some rules and regulations for how to do it, how much to do it, how to think, how to control the breathing before doing it, after doing it, etc. There's so many details, right? But the central acts are offering of Arghya and chanting of the Gayatri Japa. Now, so how to chant the Gayatri Japa? Okay, it's mentioned in Manu. In different Smriti Shastras, there may be different regulations also. So, for instance, people who follow Apastamba, people who follow Manu, people who follow, in general, people tend to follow Manu, and then they have their own sutras, which may give us slightly different. There may be a slightly different way of performing achamana by somebody, by some people who are following a particular rishi, a particular sutra, like that. For instance, in the Krishna Yajurveda Sandhyavandana of the followings of Apastamba or Bodhayana, there are some slight differences. What to speak of if they are following different Vedas? Yeah, obviously, if you're doing Krishna Yajurveda Sandhyavandana, it's different from Shukla Yajurveda Sandhyavandana, which is different from Samveda or Rig Veda or Atharva Veda Sandhyavandana. These are all different. But the basic themes are the same. So these little rules, like standing or sitting like that, they're mentioned in Manu. And maybe not everybody is reading Manu very, very clearly or very carefully, so people don't know so much about them. But for those persons who are intent on that, who are what we call smartas, in a sense, we're all smartas because we all want to follow Smriti Shastra. But when Smriti Shastra conflicts with some other higher Shastra, some Vaishnava Shastra, then we take the Vaishnava Shastra as more important. So there's in terms of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, there's a prayer by Madhavendra Puri where he says, my ritualistic bath, goodbye, my Sandhyavandana, farewell. I don't, my Tarpana, my Rishi Tarpana, my Pitru Tarpana, I'm not, all of these other rituals, I don't care. I'm simply interested in the worship of the Supreme Lord, the worship of Govinda, of Mukunda. I want to see him. I want to see Mukunda. I want to see the Supreme Lord, and I can't think about all these things. That's in terms of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Madhavendra Puri. But we also find in other Vaishnavism, like in Sri Vaishnavism, there is a great Acharya, Parashara Bhatta, who was fanning. He had a chamara, or fan. He had a chamara and he was fanning the deity of Lord Ranganatha in Namperamal, the processional deity of the Lord, like that at the time of sunset, at the time of the sun setting. So some other Vaishnava Brahmins, they said to him, you should put down the fan and you should put down the chamara, and you should now come with us and we'll all go and we'll all perform our rituals, our evening rituals of Sandhyavandana. And he said, no, I prefer to stay and to continue my service to the Lord, right? Like that. After the service is finished, then I'll perform the Sandhyavandana, like that. So this is the difference between the mentality of a Smarta and the mentality of a Vaishnava. The Smarta's mentality, he sees the Smriti Shastras and the little rules and regulations of the Smriti Shastra as being most important. And the Vaishnava sees everything in a different perspective and sees that the worship of the Lord and the service of the Lord is more important than these other smaller, which are also important, but these other rituals and things which are also important. So in most cases, it's not a conflict. There's not a conflict. So, it doesn't make any difference to me if I stand or I sit. doesn't make any difference to my worship of Krishna if I stand or I sit when I do evening Sandhya Vandana, right? But according to Manu, it makes a difference. According to Manu, it makes a difference in the Smarta Varnashram system, which is the caste by birth system. One is considered to have made a mistake and lost his caste. Now, how can he retain his caste? How can he get his caste back? That is also not impossible. But a person who's lost his caste because he sat in morning Sandhya Vandanam or morning Gayatri Japa and stood in evening Gayatri Japa, he gets his caste back quite easily by doing some fast. There's some prayaschitta, which is an atonement for breaking that particular rule. In the case of Vaishnavas, in the case of people who are not observing Sandhya Vandana or not observing some minor ritual or minor detail, right? And they say they have, there are certain other things that we do as prayaschittas. So, for instance, the chanting of the holy name, the chanting of the 1,000 names of Vishnu, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the chanting of any of the multiple names of the Lord is purifying and can purify us from these small mistakes. There are fasts that we can do. We can read the Bhagavad Gita. We can read certain other Puranas and things like that from our Bhagavatam. These also purify us. There are also other types of prayaschittas which are explained. Now, these will become maybe more apparent as we go along. It'll be described. If you do this, then perhaps you should do that. So these prayaschittas or atonements are given in the Shriti Shastras also. If somebody, there are some extreme ones. If you make this mistake, then you have to drink boiling ghee and you die, or you have to, or a person, a Shudra who's chanted Omkara has to be impaled on it, or heard Omkara has to be, who's chanted Omkara has to be impaled on a spear or something until he's dead. So there are some extreme ones. And of course, the Vaishnavas don't tend to follow the extreme punishments and extreme prayaschittas, but there are also some very easy ones. Take bath, and you're considered pure again. So it may be as easy as just taking bath and then you're pure again, like that. Just like when we do Sandhya Vandanam, we think, oh, all these sins that I did last night, or in the morning for doing Sandhya Vandanam, or during the day, if I simply sip water with the mantra, Agamarshana mantra, or the Prasana mantra, then I become purified from that. So sometimes it's very simple and sometimes it's more complicated. But in any case, prayaschittas is more important for those persons who are more attached to the little rules and regulations of Smarta Varnashram, and it's less important for the Vaishnavas who are giving up a smaller ritual or a lesser rule, right, for the greater good of serving the Supreme Lord, right? So there are different things. So here we have, so we're getting an inability to perform the duty does not degrade the devotee of the Lord. In the extreme case that a Vaishnava does something very, very simple, for which the smarta remedy would be death or something like that, then even in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna overrules that and he says, Abhichet Sudaracharo Bhajate Mama Nanyabhat, that even if a Vaishnava has committed a person who's his devotee, who's committed some heinous act, right, some murder or some very horrible stealing or some other horrible, I can't even think about the sins, right? He has committed an abominable act. Still, he's considered to be situated rightly. If he's a Vaishnava, if he continues to be a Vaishnava and continues to worship what is the definition in Hare Bhakti Vilasa of a Vaishnava? A person who's initiated by another Vaishnava and is worshipping Lord Vishnu. So as long as he's continuing to worship the Lord, he's considered to be saintly. Of course, we may not consider that person to be a first-class Vaishnava, a person who's continuously, breaking rules and regulations and sins and things like that. But still, he's a Vaishnava. So Krishna says that he's still rightly situated like that. Whereas if he's simply an ordinary, follower of the Smarta Varnashram system, there are so many prayaschittas that he has to perform that he may even have to give up that body, to get rid of that sin. Or he has to suffer, as it said before, in Tamishra, he has to suffer in some hellish some hellish position in his next birth, either in a hellish planet, or if you believe in that, or in some other form of life, one gets degraded down to another level. So just because you belong to the Varnashram system and you're thinking that, oh, I'm a Sudra this life, next life I'll be a Vaishya, then I'll be a Kshatriya, then I'll be a Brahmin, then I'll go to moksha. It doesn't necessarily work like that. If you commit a sin in that system, you also get degraded. We have the examples even of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, who were working very closely with the Muslim managers of West Bengal, right? The Hussein Shah, right? And they were ministers in his government. But because of their close association with the Muslims, they were given these titles, or some people say their names or titles, Dabir Kash and Shakar Malik. So, and even when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met Sanatana Goswami, he thought that Sanatana Goswami appeared to be like a Muslim fakir, like a dervish, like a Sufi, mendicant. He didn't recognize him as a Hindu straight away. What to speak of a Vaishnava? So in Smarta, Brahminical society in West Bengal 500 years ago, the Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, even though they were born in Gauda Saraswat Brahmin families, which is a very good type of Brahminical family, still, because of their association with the Muslims, right, in the administration, they were considered Brahma Bandhus. If you look in Manu, he'll talk about that if a Brahmin who takes birth in a particular family, or what to speak of a Brahmin, a Kshatriya, Vaishya, even a Shudra, if they not so much a Shudra, because for a Shudra there's not so many rules and regulations to follow, but for the Vaishyas, for the Trivarnika males at least, right, there are these little rules and regulations that they have to follow or they lose their caste. And this was one such rule that the Goswamis, by associating with the Muslims, they were considered to have lost their caste. But losing their caste in those days, even in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it talks about one Muslim didn't like a Hindu, he would take some water and just sprinkle some water from his Muslim water pot onto the Hindu and say, now you're a Muslim, like that. So we think today that converting from Hinduism to Islam, or from Vaishnavism to Islam, or whatever like that, means that the person himself has to actually accept Islam. But in those days, it was as easy as a Muslim sprinkling some water on you, or there were these ideas that very slight infractions of Brahminical rules would lead to the loss of caste, or even the loss of your whole religion, and you would be exiled to the other religion. So, of course, the Goswamis later on, they were, even while they were ministers, they were trying to take more time off so that they could read the Bhagavatam and do Vaishnava activities. So ultimately, they left the service of the Muslim government, and they devoted themselves fully. But society was so rigid, so smart, so much smarter. That smarter system that they had in those days, Smarta Varnashram, was so rigid that even after leaving the association of the Muslims and taking up fully the devotional service of Lord Chaitanya and Sri Krishna, right, the Goswamis were considered to be what we call Brahma Bandhus, or just friends of Brahmins, not real Brahmins, right? That's what the word Brahma Bandhu literally means, friend of a Brahmin or a relative of a Brahmin, but not a real Brahmin. So you can read it, if you want to read about this, you can read about the different subcastes. In Manusmriti, if you look in the 10th chapter of Manusmriti, he'll talk about the pure castes, and then you talk about the subcastes, and it'll talk about people who have done certain things, or they've been born of a mixture of classes, of the mother and father of different castes. They're different, they're considered different, and they have less rights, and they are considered less auspicious birth. So it's all based on birth and about infractions of little rules of society. And of course, it works very well for those persons who are able to follow the rules exactly and then do that perfectly for life after life, over a series of lives. As Kali Yuga progresses, it works less and less nicely. You can see the caste system in India today is just a mere shadow of what it used to be. And so it doesn't work very well at all today. So of course there are some people who have the idea, let's go back to that type of very strict caste by birth system. And then there are other people who say, no, that the time for that is gone. This is not the time in Kali Yuga to do that. And really the Vaishnava system is a lot quicker, a lot safer, a lot easier. And perhaps that should be the emphasis. So in each case, society has to go on. It's just a matter of exactly what the basis of it is. Is it based on caste by birth and very, very small infractions of very intricate rules like that? Or is it based on, or is it going to be based on, a devotional service of the Lord, one's qualities, one's activities, and these sort of things, giving up of duties, lower duties in case there's no time to just perform the main duties. So these are the philosophical questions that have to be thought out by people who are interested in Hindu sociology and Vaishnava sociology, and how they intermesh, how they intermingle. How much of the Varnashram, how much of Smarta Varnashram rules and regulations you want to follow as a Vaishnava, or how little you want to follow, is determined by your outlook on all of this. So it's a very long discussion, but anyway, he's getting into that sort of area here. So he's saying inability to perform his duty does not degrade a devotee of the Lord. Well, this is good news for us, right? Because I can tell you for sure, I don't know any Vaishnavas, and I'm not just speaking about Western Vaishnavas, but I'm also talking about even in India, who follow all of the rules, the little rules and regulations of Smriti Shastra. Now, of course, we all follow some of them, but and we try to follow the ones which are more important, especially which are considered more important in Vaishnavism. But the ones which are less important, like sitting or standing, during japa of Gayatri Japa and Sandhyavandana, this is a very small rule. So I would say, if anybody said to me, well, I just have this inability to just stand. Well, I do, 1,000 Gayatri Japas every day, 3 times a day, and I can't stand for that long. I'm an old man, like that. There's a story about Ramanujacharya, who lived for 120 years, that even at the age of 120, he insisted that people should help him to stand up while offering argya. Because when you offer argya and Sandhyavandana, which again I said is one of the 2 main things of Sandhyavandana, even if you don't do anything else, the argya and the Gayatri Japa are the most important parts of Sandhyavandana. So he would offer argya. You have to offer argya to the sun, and you have to do it from a standing position normally. Now, I've written a procedure where you can actually sit down and you can offer it through one hand. But the normal situation is you stand up and you offer it in 2 hands, and you even stand up on your tippy toes when you stand up on your toes when you do it like that. So this is if you want to do it exactly correctly according to the Smriti Shastras, like that. Now, does everybody have to do that? What if you're very old, like Ramanuja, you're 120 years old? He would insist that people help him to stand up so he could do it properly. But today, if somebody says to me, I have I'm very sick, I can't stand up, I can't do my Sandhyavandana, even it's possible, we'll find there are regulations and rules and things like that one can get somebody else in his family to do Sandhyavandana for him. We'll find out here when we come to Ekadasi that you can have somebody else fast for you on Ekadasi. You don't have to fast on Ekadasi. I mean, you should fast on Ekadasi, right, according to the scriptures. But in case you can't because you're sick or you have some reason why you can't fast on Ekadasi, you can have somebody else fast for you on Ekadasi. So there's some regulations like that. So there are rules and regulations of the scripture. Then there are exceptions to rules and regulations of the scripture. Then there are things that we can do when we break the rules and regulations of the scripture to atone for breaking the rules and regulations of the scripture. And then there are also rules and regulations in the scripture that tell us that even if we don't follow certain rules and regulations in the scripture, if we're doing it for a higher purpose, the worship of the Supreme Lord, then that can be accepted. So this is what we're talking about here. In case we couldn't perform a particular duty, which is considered a lower duty, an indirect worship of the Lord, if we are performing the direct worship of the Lord, but neglecting this indirect worship of the Lord, like Sanyavandanam or something like that, it's okay. And it doesn't degrade us. Whereas in the Smarta Varnashram system, one becomes degraded. If he stands in the evening or sits in the morning during Gayatri Japa, he becomes degraded and he has to do prayaschitta for that. So it makes it a lot easier, because otherwise there's many, many rules and regulations, and then you have to constantly be doing prayaschitta for these rules and regulations in different ways. If you follow the Smarta Varnashram system, because it's much more detail oriented, let's say, and very small details, minutia. So the Vaishnava system seems more applicable for Manda Sumanda Matayo. It says in the Bhagavatam, people in Kali Yuga are considered less intelligent. So, and we have so many problems in that way. So anyway, but if people want to try to follow all the minor rules and regulations and do them correctly, there's nothing wrong with that. But what he's saying here is a Vaishnava doesn't have to worry that much about these small rules and regulations, or these particular indirect duties. Okay, so from the Padma Purana, the Supreme Lord has stated, right, if while engaging in my devotional service, the devotee fails to perform his prescribed duties such as sandhya, then the 30 million sages are ready to do it for him. Well, that's nice, right? So we have a backup. Because we're Vaishnavas, we have a backup, devotees of Lord Krishna, right? We have these 30 million sages who are apparently willing to do our Sandhya Vandana for us. Does it mean that we can just forget about doing Sandhya Vandana? No, it doesn't mean that. What it means is that we should try to engage in the service of the Lord, and we should try also to engage in the indirect service of the Lord by doing Sandhya Vandana and all these things. If, however, it comes down to a choice between the two, we should opt for the direct service of the Lord over these small rituals which are indirectly service to the Lord. Okay. If there's a conflict. So now, text 9, up from Adi Purana, it says, the prescribed duties of those who are engaged in my devotional service, giving up all types of fruitive activities, or who constantly remember my holy name, right? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. The first 3 aspects of Bhakti Yoga, right? Out of the 9 aspects. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Bandhanam, Dasyam, Sakyamatmani Vedanam, Prahlad Maharajanu, 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, he explains these 9 devotional practices. So here it's mentioning Smaranti. Smaranti, naturally, if we chant the Lord's name, if we hear the Lord's name, the third thing naturally occurs, that we will remember the Lord and remember his name. So those who are constantly chanting his holy names, hearing and remembering them like that, those persons, right, they're carried out by sages who are devoted to me, right? So the prescribed duties of those who engage in my devotional service, giving up all types of fruitive activities and constantly remember my holy names, are carried out by sages who are devoted to me, right? So for example, I'll give you a story. There was one nice Vaishnava devotee that I knew when I was living in Vrindavan and worshipping in the Krishna Balaram temple in Raman Reti in ISKCON temple, like that, as a pujari. Like that, there was a very nice devotee there, Indian devotee called Vibhu Chaitanya Das. And he is a very old man, and he used to come and he used to cook all of the offerings. So from the morning Mangalarti sweets all the way through to the evening, Saina Bhoga, he was cooking all the offerings, which is very difficult to be in a hot kitchen in India all throughout the year, especially Vrindavan gets very hot. Maybe in winter it's not too bad to be in the kitchen, but in the summer it's very difficult. So he would do that summer and winter. He would do that every day of the week. He would do that all the time, like that. Some people criticized him at some time to Srila Prabhupada. They went and they said, "Oh, this guy, we don't see, maybe he's not chanting his rounds. Maybe he's not chanting japa too much, like that." And Prabhupada said, no, he doesn't have to chant japa. He doesn't have to. because he is fully engaged. He's fully 100%, 100% engaged. And if anybody would go and see him actually making the Lord's meals, cooking in the deity kitchen in Vrindavan, he was always chanting Hare Krishna while he was doing it. So maybe at some other time when he's not in the kitchen, people didn't see him with his hand in his bead bag all the time. But in the kitchen itself, he was always chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, like this. And so, this criticism by some other people who, Prabhupada dismissed it because he was fully engaged in the Lord's service. So here, this is the point. The point is, are we fully engaged in the Lord's service, or fully engaged in chanting his name, or hearing and chanting and remembering his name, which is Yuga Dharma, right? So if somebody is in that position where they're fully engaged in the Lord's service, right, then it doesn't matter all these other activities, that whether he performed them or he didn't perform them, whether he took a bath or didn't take a bath, whether he did his Sandhyavandana or didn't do his Sandhyavandana, whether he put tilak or didn't put tilak, whether he, all these things these are smaller rules and regulations. Now, we shouldn't try to abuse that and say, oh, well, therefore I don't have to do anything. I'll just sit and I'll chant Hare Krishna all day like that, and nobody can ask me to do any service. Nobody can ask me to do my duties, and I don't have to do Sandhyavandana. I don't have to do anything. I don't even have to take a bath or get out of bed. I can just stay in bed all day and chant Hare Krishna. No, that's not the idea. The idea is that we should try to do everything that's in the scriptures the way it's said, like that. But in case there's a conflict, if the Vaishnava has the advantage over the Smarta Brahman, the person who's following the Smarta system of Varnashrama, the Vaishnava has the advantage because a Vaishnava is exempted. He's exempted from all these little rules and regulations if he's fully engaged in the Lord's service. It's not that I can say, oh, I'm a Vaishnava, so I'm just going to go and do nonsense, and instead of doing Sandhyavandana, I'm going to watch television or something, right? I'm going to go to a movie, or I'm going to go engage in some mundane sporting activity or something. Oh, I don't feel like doing Sandhyavandana, I'm going for a swim, in the pool or in the sea. So this is not the idea. The idea is that we have to follow the rules and regulations of the scripture. However, when it comes down to fully being engaged in Krishna service, and we don't have time, we don't have the ability to perform, to do things exactly according to the minute rules and regulations of the Smriti Shastra, then we're exempted. Whereas if you follow Smarta Varnashram system, you're not exempted. Your lapse or non-performance of particular things or doing something in a wrong way will be counted as a sin. You'll have to do prayaschitta. If you don't do prayaschitta, you may even have to come back and take a lower birth, work your way up the Varnashram ladder again, life after life. This is a very difficult system. Unless you're perfect in the Smarta Varnashram system, it doesn't work. Whereas, even if you're not perfect in the Vaishnava system, it still can work. The goal can still be achieved, even if you are not perfect. So that's the point. So here he's saying that the Lord himself is saying that he has people ready to take up to fast on Ekadasi for you, to chant your rounds for you, to do all these things if you can't do them, but if you're fully engaged in his service, or if you're remembering his name always. Yeah. So anyway, let's see some more examples here. Neophyte devotees are advised to continue performing their prescribed religious and occupational duties until their faith becomes stronger. So remember, we were talking about in the 10th Vilasa, we were talking about different levels of advancement of Vaishnavas. So we have the great Vaishnavas who are all worshipable by everyone, the Uttamadhikaris, and we have the Madhyamadhikaris, then we have the Kanistadhikaris. So what he's talking about here is the Kanistadhikari, the initial devotees. So it says here Kamadhikari. So, okay, so there's different. I don't want to go through the Sanskrit exactly like that, but let's see. what it says. So it is for this reason. So neophyte devotees are advised to continue performing their prescribed religious and occupational duties with faith until their faith becomes stronger. It is for this reason that, so somebody may read this. Let's say somebody reads this and he's just becoming a devotee and he's reading this and he may get the wrong impression. So when the acharya, when the teachers are teaching the people becoming neophyte Vaishnavas or becoming Vaishnavas, they first of all, they're going to teach them that, look, there are these rules and regulations. They're very, you have to follow these things. Even the slightest deviation from this slight rule and regulation is not good. And they have to try to impress upon the neophyte like that. And the neophyte will take that and he'll accept that and he'll have faith in that. But then when he reads Hari Bhakti Vilas, when he reads this section, he'll think, oh, why did I have to so strictly follow all these little minute rules and regulations? It's not actually necessary for a Vaishnava to do that. Right? He can only accept that once his faith becomes stronger by studying the scriptures and by the Lord within his heart giving him the realization that he can understand it, because all realization ultimately comes from the Lord, the Chaitya Guru within. So when his faith gets stronger in the process of Vaishnavism, then he'll realize that, okay, so we have to make some exceptions here and there. Like that. I can remember going to a sacrifice in Bangalore, and there was a yagshala, and normally only the priests who have taken bath and who are specially have been chosen for that ceremony can go inside the yagshala, right, the sacrificial arena, and everybody else has to sit outside. So I was with another devotee, and we were sitting outside with the crowd because we're not chosen priests. We're not part of the people in the yagshala and everything like that. One of my teachers was performing the ceremonies and things with some other priests, and this friend of mine said, "I'm getting crowded out by people here in the crowd. There's more room inside the yagshala because there's only a few priests. So can you ask your teacher to let us go inside the yagshala where we'd have more room?" And I said, "Well, we have." As a neophyte, I said, "Hey, there's a rule against that. We haven't taken bath. We're not picked for being priests for this ceremony. We have no right. We have no adhikari. We have no qualification to enter this yagshala right now. We should just observe from outside because we're not part of the sacrificial performance. So we should just wait outside, and that's the rule, right?" So he asked that. He said, no, I'm feeling crushed here by people outside. Ask him if we can just go inside and sit inside where there's more room. So I asked my teacher, and he said, of course, you're Bhagavatas. You're Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. Therefore, you're considered always pure. And therefore, of course, you can come inside and you can sit inside and like that. So he immediately agreed. My teacher said immediately agreed like that, even though I know and he knows that it's against certain rules. Even though he understands it's against certain rules, right? But because he was the head priest and they're all Vaishnava priests, and they said, yeah, these people are Vaishnavas, let them come and sit inside like that and be comfortable. Okay. So that's just an example. So there are many examples like this where Vaishnavas will not follow the exact rules and regulations of the scriptures out of some necessity, right? Out of some necessity. The necessity should be, though, however, to actually worship the Lord. I was feeling at that point, we don't need to go inside because we're not performing the worship of the Lord. They are. And so we should just stay outside and we should just observe. But my teacher thought, oh, these people are Bhagavatas, they're Vaishnavas, they should be comfortable, they should come inside. So anyway, there's many examples you can give about this. So it is for this reason that the descriptions of the prescribed duties are given here, right? However, because devotees who have developed strong faith are not interested in performing fruitive activities, because a lot of these actions that are described in the scriptures are for the performance of fruitive activities, for performance of karma kanda, which is, for doing some, even though it may be the worship of Krishna, But if it's done with the idea of getting karma, artha, and moksha, karma, artha, and dharma, that we want these things, like we want economic development, we want happiness, we want religiosity, these sort of things. If it's done with some material gain in mind, then what's the point of that? What's the point of that? If we're doing something greater for a greater good, only for the pure service of Lord Krishna, without any thought of any gain for ourselves, this is considered a higher calling, a higher activity. So, however, because the devotee has developed strong faith, the devotees who have developed strong faith, who not the Kanistadhikaris but the Madhyamadhikaris, are not interested in performing fruitive activities. They are not degraded when they fail to perform them. Right? So there may be some rituals which are there, which are important for those persons who are interested in sapala puja. The puja that they perform, the worship they perform, is for a sakama. It's for a particular desire, material desire that they have. But they're the type of four types of people who have four desires, but they approach Krishna for the fulfillment of those desires, not necessarily for his pure service. Right? But because as a Vaishnava's faith increases, he doesn't approach Krishna anymore for fulfillment of material desires, but only approaches Krishna for performing pure devotional service without any motivation, without any idea of gain for the person. Not even liberation. The idea is the Vaishnavas, they say, let me serve you, O Lord, whichever way you want, even if. What does Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saying in Shikshastakam? He says, even if you crush me by your embrace, right? You're still my worshipable Lord, birth after birth. So even if I'm here birth after birth, even if I don't go to liberation, if I don't go to your supreme abode and worship you there, even if you want me to stay here and rot in hell like that, I'll do it, right? But just let me serve you. Just let me continue to serve you. So this takes much more faith than the initial Vaishnava has, the Kanistadhikari has. So only when one becomes a Madhyamadhikari or an Uttamadhikari that he can start to think like this, that he doesn't want any, he only wants the service of the Lord. He doesn't want anything, he doesn't want anything for himself. Okay, so that is the mentality you should have if you give up any of these these indirect activities. I can't say the lower, they're scriptural activities, but they're not so important as the direct service of the Lord. So again, let's start again. Neophyte devotees are advised to continue performing their prescribed religious and occupational duties until their faith becomes stronger. It is for this reason that descriptions, so just understand that people who, in general, if you meet people, even Vaishnavas, who in general, who they're fixated on these minute rules and regulations of the scripture of the Smarta Varnashram system. They are to be understood to be, what does it say here in Hierarchy to us? They are understood to be neophyte Vaishnavas. Right, and those persons whose faith is a little stronger, right, who are perhaps come up to the Madhyamadhikari level, right, or even the Uttamadhikari level, but at least the Madhyamadhikari level, those persons, they will understand. They will have more faith and they will understand the relative importance of different duties. The relative importance of different duties and how some duties which are directly to the Supreme Lord and direct service to the Supreme Lord without any motivation is much more important. Right, so again, neophyte devotees are advised to continue performing their prescribed religious duties and religious and occupational duties until their faith becomes stronger. It is for this reason that the descriptions of prescribed duties are given here. What's he saying? The whole Hari Bhakti Vilasa with all these prescribed duties, all these little minute details, right, is given for neophyte devotees. However, because devotees who have developed stronger faith or strong faith are not interested in performing fruitive activities, they are not degraded if they fail to perform them. This will be described in detail later on. So that neophyte devotees who desire the quick fulfillment of material ambitions can eventually achieve perfection. Learned authorities have propounded the performance of morning, noon, and evening worship, meaning Sandhya, separately from devotional service. So, if you look in the scriptures, you see this is separate. Sandhya Vandanam and morning, noon, and evening duties, these particular duties of taking bath and doing all these sort of things which are indirect devotional service, are described separately from the actual devotional service of chanting the holy name and meditating on the Lord, remembering the Lord, and hearing His glories and all these different things. These are direct devotional service. So what's direct? If it's confusing, what's direct devotional service? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaram, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasim, Sakyam, Atmanivedam, Navada Bhakti. This is direct devotional service. What is indirect? Everything else is indirect. Okay? Simple. Like that. So they have been propounded separately, these things. And the Bhagavatam deals basically with what? The Bhagavatam doesn't deal with all these other things. It only deals with the direct Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaram, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasim, Navada Bhakti. That's what it deals with. Vaishnavism. And the rest of it is Smarta Varnashram system. So now, text 13 to 16. Atha, Trikala Archana, Vidi Vishesha. Special procedures for morning, noon, and evening. Having said that, and in the last verse, and having said that we will describe about this concept a little bit more later on, he's going to again talk about morning, noon, and evening duties. But he just wants to get it through to you before we start talking again about the details of morning, noon, and evening duties. He wants to get you to the right understanding, and the right understanding is to understand that neophyte devotees find these things to be most important, and as your faith progresses, you find them to be less important as compared to direct devotional service to the Lord. They're still important. These activities. They're still important, even if they're indirectly worshiping the Lord. They still have to be done because they're in the scriptures, they're the order of the Lord. However, if they conflict with the primary duties, what are the primary duties? Again, Navada Bhakti, the 9 forms of Bhakti, Sravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaran, etc. If they conflict with that, then they can be either neglected or they can be done at a different time. Okay, that's the main point here. And but only a person with strong faith will do that. A person without strong faith, who is interested in achieving materialistic goals from his devotional service, the Kanistadikari, he won't think like that. Only a more advanced devotee with stronger faith and more understanding of the scripture will understand this. This is the point. This is a very important point. Okay, so now continuing on, having that in mind, now let's talk again about the morning, noon, and evening duties and how to perform them. So special procedures for morning, noon, and evening duties, right? In Gautamiya Tantra, it's stated, first, the process of morning worship is being described. One should meditate on Vrindavan, which is full of transcendental trees, such as the punaga, jackfruit, naga, kanchana, bakula, bilva, wild kuruvaka. The branches of these trees bend down due to the burden of their innumerable flowers. So we meditate on Vrindavan. There's all these wonderful different flowers there, wonderful flowers like bakula and bilva, naga, champaka, all these different. And they're covered with flowers. There's just immense amount of flowers on these trees. One should meditate on the riverbank, which is decorated with champak flowers, incense, ghee lamps, a bed, flower garlands, a pearl necklace, a flag, and many other types of wildflowers, which were used by the residents of Vrindavan for their worship and thus placed within the forest. So this is the pastoral scene that we meditate upon in the morning of Sri Krishna, right? When we say this, Divyad Vrindavana Kalpa Gumadya Srimad Rattakala Simhasanasto Sri Radha Srila Govinda Deva Prastalagi Sevi Manasmarami. And we meditate upon Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan, like that. And here we meditate upon the banks of the river Yamuna, right? This is when it says river bank, of course there are many holy rivers, but the river Yamuna flows through Vrindavan. So meditate on Vrindavan. We have to meditate upon Vrindavan in this way, right? In the morning. Continuing on. One should meditate upon Lord Krishna after setting the scene within your mind of Vrindavan and the river bank and all of these wonderful trees with flowers and all of these wildflowers and all of this worshipable, this paraphernalia for worshiping the Lord there. Then after setting the scene, then one should meditate upon Lord Krishna. So this is describing meditation. Why are we describing meditation now? Because so we have Abhigamana, Upadana, Ija, Swadhyaya, and now yoga. Yoga means mystic meditation. This is how we should think. So, of course, he's talking in the last verse. He said in the beginning, in the morning one should meditate like this. But also now, after we've finished the day, finished our study after doing the puja and everything like that, at the end of the day, we're also meditating upon the Lord, right? We have to set this scene in our mind. So then one should meditate upon Lord Krishna, who is comfortably seated in Padmasana yogic posture. So the full lotus posture. Padmasana means a lotus posture. In the shade of a desire tree. There is a desire tree, these kadamba trees or these different trees. Actually, all the trees in Vrindavan, in Goloka Vrindavan, in the spiritual world, are considered to be desire trees. A desire tree means a wish-fulfilling tree. The tree itself can give you wishes. And so the idea is you just hug the tree and make a wish and your wish comes true. So Krishna is seated in lotus asana, lotus posture, underneath this desire tree. Right? He's sitting there. In the shade of a desire tree on the banks of the river. And the river, of course, is the Yamuna River. His lotus face is decorated with a beautiful smile, and he plays on his flute. He's adorned with various jeweled ornaments. He wears a garland of forest flowers. So he has got these different jeweled ornaments, and he's got all these he's got this Vaijanti mala made of 5 different types of wild forest flowers in different colors, right? And he is surrounded by gopis, by the young cowherd maidens, right, who are his devotees. And he is glorified by the demigods, the asuras. So in the sky, we can meditate that the different devatas are riding on their different carriers, and they are showering flowers down, and they're also praising him with hymns from the Vedas and other stotras and other prayers that they're making as they're there. The devas, even the asuras, the demons are there, the siddhas, the gandharvas, the apsaras, which are like angel-like beings, and we have the yakshas and the vidyadharas, people who are the singers and dancers of the celestial realm, and birds from the sky, and great sages from the earth. All rishis are there with their folded palms, and they're all glorifying the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna as he sits underneath this desire tree on the banks of the river Yamuna. This is the way we should meditate. This is a guided meditation for Vaishnavas. So we can chant the Sanskrit verses. We can say Dhyanam, and we can chant the Sanskrit verses, and then we can think, or we could even chant the English or whatever language. We can translate this into local language so that we have more understanding of it, and we're able to set this scene in our minds. So continuing on, Krishna is surrounded by cowherd boys, deer. Okay, so we'll finish this up, this meditation up, and then we'll close for the day. But it's a nice way to finish. So Krishna is surrounded by the cowherd boys. Also, the cowherd girls are there. The cowherd boys are also there. The gopas and gopis, deer. So other wonderful creatures of the forest, deer and birds. These axis deer that we have here in Hawaii. We have those type of deer also, which is called the Krishnarjuna deer. Right? We have Krishna deer. It's called blackish spotted deer. Hundreds of millions of cows and calves lick his body. So you have these cows coming up, and out of affection, the word vatsalya in Sanskrit, the word vatsa means a calf. So when the cow has a calf and the calf is born, the mother cow licks the body of the calf clean after birth. So this is where the word vatsalya comes from in Sanskrit. It is that intense love that a parent feels for a child, like that. So this vatsalya Vatsalya, so out of intense love, right? The cows are coming up and they're licking Krishna's body. He is most attractive, like a blue lotus flower. So Krishna's blue, like the rain cloud, like the monsoon cloud. So he is compared to a blue lotus flower here. Indeed, he's the reservoir of all kinds of beauty. His face is shining like the moon. These are all poetic descriptions of Krishna, like that. So his face is bright white like the full moon. His eyes appear like lotus petals, right? They're in the shape of lotus petal eyes, like that. His hands, the eyes are normally there. Sometimes the eyes are described as fish shaped. Sometimes they're described as lotus petal shaped. So he's called Pundarikaksha. The word Pundarikaksha is a name of Krishna that means with lotus petal eyes, beautiful lotus petal eyes. His hands and feet resemble lotus flowers. So there are these different parts of his body which resemble lotus flowers, right? So hands and feet resemble lotus flowers and are decorated with rubies and coral. Decorated with rubies and coral. So he has rings and he has rubies and coral on his hands. He is the shelter of all living entities and the most dear Lord of the gopis. So after meditating in this way, as a regular daily function, we should meditate on this every day. One should worship the Lord with 16 kinds of paraphernalia, which means the Sodasa Upacharas, right? So this was described up here in the beginning of this section as to be done in the morning. So we've already done this, but this is just reiterating what we did, right? One should worship with the 16 kinds of paraphernalia. Thereafter, one should offer the deity milk and yogurt mixed with sugar candy on a golden plate, and also offer food to the cowherd boys on plates made of bell metal. After completing this worship with care and attention, one should chant his mantras with concentration. So this is the meditation that one should have when one is doing his Sandhya Vandanam, his Vaishnava Sandhya Vandanam, because again, there's Smarta Sandhya Vandanam and Vaishnava Sandhya Vandanam. There's the Vedic Sandhya Vandanam of the Savitri Gayatri, and then there's the other Sandhya Vandanam, the Tantric Sandhya Vandanam, or Agamic Sandhya Vandanam, with the Tantric or Agamic mantras, the Gopal mantras specifically in Hari Bhakti Vilasa, right? Then after completing this worship, which is done mentally in the mind, then he should chant his mantras with concentration. Next, we talk about the process for worship at noon. We talked about in the morning. Now we're talking about the process for noon. It's interesting that he didn't mention this before. Like we had Sandhya Vandanam in the morning and we had Tantric Sandhya Vandanam in the morning as well, like that. But it was described in a very ritualistic way. Why? Because he's describing it for the person who just got initiated, the person who's a Kanistadikari, the person who doesn't have very much faith and doesn't have very much knowledge of the scriptures. And then he's taking you through the system. And then when he gets to after he describes in the day that one should sit with other Vaishnavas and should study the scriptures, then he's understanding that now you've studied the scriptures, now you should come to a higher understanding about these rituals that I taught you before. And now I'm going to tell you a more detailed and a more delicate way of doing them, a more intense way of doing them, a more Krishna conscious way of doing them, because you now will have more faith in them. You will now have more faith in them that these things that you're doing, you will do it with more realization because you've studied the scriptures. So that's why he's telling him again, and he's telling them again after he's described the study during the day, the study. So you do the study. Of course, it'll take more than one day, but in Hari Bhakti Vilasa, he's describing it. It's all in a certain order, and we can understand exactly how it works by going through and thinking deeply about why he's put it in this particular order. So it's a very nice way that he's done this. So you can see also in Hari Bhakti Vilasa, there's no way that you can write it out step by step. You have to read first of all that part, the early part, then you have to take the later part. You have to put them together to make a complete message, a complete, procedure. So we'll do that. Definitely we have to do that. We have to do it in a nice way. So we have Sandhya Vandana with all the rules and regulations, and now we need Sandhya Vandana with the heart, with the essence, with the Vaishnava essence of it added. But that comes only after studying something and after realizing that it's not just pouring some water and sitting or standing and all these little rules and regulations, but it's actually meditation on Krishna.